I was born to review this stuff. Hello movie buffs, my name is Steve aka NJMovieFreak, and welcome to episode 10 today of NJMovieFreak Film Reviews. I'm going to show you folks how we do things downtown with Ghostbusters 1 and Ghostbusters 2. Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2 are two supernatural comedies directed and produced by the late Ivan Reitman and written by Dan Aykroyd and Hal Ramis. It stars Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Hal Ramis, who start a ghost-catching business in New York City, battle a 100-foot-tall marshmallow man, a shape-shifting god, a river of slime, and a painting possessed by a power-hungry 16th century tyrant of Carpathia. The films also had a plethora of other well-known actors, such as Sigourney Weaver, Rick Moranis, Annie Potts, William Atherton, and Ernie Hudson, just to name a few. Ghostbusters 1 was a critical and box office smash when it opened and emerged as the second highest grossing film of the year after Beverly Hills Cop. The first weekend alone totaled the US box office $242.2 million and is still one of the most successful comedies of all time. Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2 weren't just successful films, they were a bona fide success that spun off into an animated series, tons of merchandise, and of course, video games. And speaking of video games, if you love playing classic arcade games and live or are visiting the North Jersey area, please check out Billy's Midway Arcade. It's home to many classic video and arcade games from 1954 and on, such as Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, The Amazing Spider-Man Pinball, and Computer Space, the first arcade video game ever. Billy's is focused on classic arcade games for nostalgic adults, not a modern kids arcade. Come and join in all the fun under one roof at Billy's Midway Arcade, located at 312 Lafayette Avenue in Hawthorne, New Jersey, located on the second floor. Look for the banners and signs on the door. Ghostbusters was released into theaters on June 8, 1984, and Ghostbusters 2 on June 16, 1989, 37 and 32 years ago. If you haven't seen both films by now, who are you going to call? Spoilers! Peter Venkman, Ray Stantz, and Egon Spengler are parapsychology professors at Columbia University investigating the paranormal. Following their first encounter with the librarian ghost at the New York Public Library, the university dean fires them and dismisses the credibility of their research. They decide to go into business for themselves and establish a paranormal investigation and elimination service operating out of a defunct firehouse, the Ghostbusters. After a paranormal encounter in her apartment, Manhattanite Dana Barrett calls the Ghostbusters. She recounts seeing a demonic dog-like creature that uttered a single word, Zool. Ray and Egon research Zool, while Peter offers to inspect Dana's apartment in a failed attempt to seduce her. The Ghostbusters are then hired to remove a gluttonous ghost from the Sedgwick Hotel. They capture the ghost and deposit it into a custom-built echo containment unit under the firehouse. Supernatural activity rapidly increases across the city, and the Ghostbusters become more and more famous, inevitably having to hire a fourth Ghostbuster, Winston Zeddemore. Suspicious of the Ghostbusters' business practices, EPA Inspector Walter Peck asks to evaluate their equipment but is dismissed by Venkman. When Dana returns home, she is possessed by Zool, and a similar entity possesses her neighbor Louis Tully. Peter arrives and finds the possessed Dana claiming to be Zool, the gatekeeper. Louis wanders around the city until he is caught by police and brought to Egon. Tully claims he is Vince Clortho, the keymaster. Mr. Peck returns with the cop, a court order, and a city worker who shuts down the containment unit, causing an explosion that releases all the captured ghosts. Vince escapes in the confusion and makes his way to the apartment building to join Zool. While in jail, Ray and Egon reveal that Dana's building was designed by a leader of a Gozer-worshipping cult to function as an antenna to attract and concentrate spiritual energy to summon Gozer and bring about the end of the world. Torn between its reputation, election status, and supernatural chaos across the city, the mayor releases the Ghostbusters. The Ghostbusters make their way to the top of the building's roof as Zool and Vince open the gate between dimensions and transform into demonic terror dogs. Gozer appears in the form of a woman and attacks the Ghostbusters, then disappears. Her disembodied voice demands the Ghostbusters to choose a form of the Destructor. Ray inadvertently recalls a beloved corporate mascot from his childhood, and Gozer reappears in the form of a gigantic Stay Puft Marshmallow Man that begins destroying the city. Against his earlier advice, Egon instructs the team to cross their proton streams at the dimensional gate, resulting in an explosion that destroys Gozer's avatar, sending it back to its dimension and closing the gateway. 5 years after saving New York City from destruction by the shape-shifting god Gozer, the Ghostbusters have been sued for property damage and barred from investigating the supernatural, forcing them out of business. Ray Stantz now owns an occult bookstore and works a side job alongside Winston Zeddemore as unpopular children's entertainers. Egon Spengler works in a laboratory experimenting with human emotions, and Peter Venkman hosts a television talk show about psychics. Dana Barrett, Peter's ex-girlfriend, has an infant son named Oscar with her ex-husband and works as an art museum curator. She turns to the Ghostbusters for help after Oscar's baby stroller rolls by itself into the busy intersection. At the museum, a painting of Vigo the Carpathian, a 16th century tyrant and powerful magician, comes to life and enslaves Dana's boss, Janos, and orders Janos to bring him a child to possess, allowing him to escape the confines of his painting and live again to conquer the world. The Ghostbusters excavate the intersection where Oscar's stroller rolled to and discovered a river of slime running through the abandoned beach pneumatic transit system. Ray obtains a sample, but is attacked by the slime and accidentally breaks a pipe which falls into a power line, causing a citywide blackout. The Ghostbusters are arrested and taken to court for the damage and for investigating the supernatural. In the courtroom, the slime sample is presented as evidence. It responds physically to the judge's angry tirade against the Ghostbusters and then explodes, evoking the Scoleri brothers' ghosts, who he sentenced to death by electrocution. The Ghostbusters capture the ghost in exchange for a dismissal of the charges and the right to resume their business. One night, the slime invades Dana's apartment, attacking her and Oscar. She seeks refuge with Peter, and they rekindle their relationship. Determining Vigo and the slime are connected, Egon, Ray, and Winston investigate the river slime, but then, not by choice, go for a swim in it. They emerge at the museum's front steps and begin fighting each other until Egon realizes they are being possessed by the slime's negative energy. The Ghostbusters tell the mayor of their suspicions, but he dismisses them, and his assistant Jack Hardmire has them committed to a psychiatric hospital in order to protect the mayor's political interests. A Mary Poppins-like spirit in the form of Janos kidnaps Oscar, and Dana follows them to the museum, which is then covered with the slime. On New Year's Eve, the slime rises to the streets, causing widespread supernatural chaos. Learning of his assistant's actions and having the Ghostbusters committed, the mayor fires him and has the Ghostbusters released. Determining the need for a positive symbol to weaken the slime, the Ghostbusters use slime charged with positive emotions to animate and pilot the Statue of Liberty through the streets of New York City. At the museum, the Ghostbusters use the statue's torch to break through the ceiling, stopping Vigo from possessing Oscar. Vigo takes on physical form, immobilizes Dana and the Ghostbusters, and recaptures Oscar. The crowds outside begin singing Auld Lang Syne, and their positivity weakens Vigo, forcing him to return to the painting, and the Ghostbusters are freed. As a last-ditch attempt to kill them, Vigo possesses Ray, but the Ghostbusters use their weapons to free him and defeat Vigo. What's interesting is that you would think Sigourney Weaver would know how to defend herself from paranormal species, considering she's trained with battling space entities. Isn't that right, Ripley?
Get away from her, you bitch!
And now for some behind-the-scenes facts. Ghostbusters was released side by side with Gremlins in 1984. You would think, since Gremlins is a Christmas movie, that we'd get a December release date, right? 1984 also had many other great releases, including The Karate Kid, The Terminator, Beverly Hills Cop, This is Spinal Tap, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo. Just kidding, just kidding. Shortly after the film's release, Huey Lewis, the lead singer for Huey Lewis and the News, sued Ray Parker Jr. for plagiarism, alleging that he had copied the Ghostbusters song melody, primarily the bass line from Lewis's song, I Want a New Drug. The case was settled out of court in 1985 for an undisclosed sum and a confidentiality agreement that prohibited discussing the case in the future. According to Parker Jr., there were several lawsuits at the time because when you sell that many records, I think everyone wants to say that they wrote the song. He then later sued Lewis for breaching the confidentiality agreement in 2001.
You go get a court order, and I'll sue your ass for wrongful prosecution.
Gozer, played in the film by Serbian model actress Slavica Jovan, was originally going to appear in the form of Ivo Shandor, the founder of the Gozer cult. The Gozer role was first offered to Paul Pee Wee Rubens, but he turned it down.
Pee Wee, listen to reason. Come on!
I'm listening to reason.
In 1990, Universal Studios opened the Ghostbusters Spooktacular show. It was a special effects attraction that brought guests directly into the movie. Guests would enter a building with a tour guide to a room where an actor dressed as Louis Tully would interact with the guests by showing them Ghostbuster inventions, their proton packs, and to meet Slimer. After that, the room would go black, and then guests' attention would be drawn to a set of large pitched windows behind them. Behind the windows was a set recreated to look like the third act in Ghostbusters, where the Ghostbusters go up against Gozer and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Unfortunately, on November 9, 1996, the attraction was closed for good. In its place 2 years after that came the attraction Twister, Ride It Out. As a tribute to the Ghostbusters attraction, in the firehouse window of Twister, Ride It Out is an ad for the Paranormal Travel Agency. If you're curious to know more about this attraction, you can go to YouTube and keyword Theme Park History of Ghostbusters Spooktacular or Defunctland, the history of Ghostbusters Spooktacular. Without Dan Aykroyd, there would be no Ghostbusters. The actor's great-grandfather, Dr. Sam Aykroyd, was an Edwardian spiritualist researcher who held regular seances, while his father, Peter, wrote a book entitled A History of Ghosts that revealed what it was like growing up in a family that had its own medium. In the autumn of 1981, Aykroyd wrote his first treatment, and the question of what it would be like to build the proper hardware and properly freeze or capture the image of an apparition would be answered only 3 years later.
We got one!
Shooting in New York City was no easy task in the 1980s. Dan Aykroyd said in an interview for the book Ghostbusters, The Inside Story that New York was one of the most corrupt venues in the world for any activity. We had to pay people off. I won't say what entities, but money was put in paper bags and given to people. But we did manage to do a lot of walking around without paying for permits.
Hey, what, you boneheads are gonna come and roust me out again? I got 3,000 phones out in Greenwich Hills. I got about 8 million miles of cable I gotta check. You gonna come and shake my monkey tree again?
The Mr. Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is a staple for Ghostbuster fans and many people who have the theories of who or what it actually is paying homage to. Well, it's actually a combination of three things. It's the Michelin Man, the Pillsbury Doughboy, and a Canadian product called the Angelus Marshmallow Man. And speaking of Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, those marshmallows look really good. Should I have some?
Yes, have some.
Bill Murray is notorious for not giving 100% thumbs up when asked to star in films and often shows up late. Hal Ramis said in the 1985 book Making Ghostbusters, "We spent an hour together and he said maybe 2 words about the script. Then he took off again. But it was trust. And Ghostbusters was the first film he had ever committed to without fighting like crazy. However, Murray was not involved in Dan Aykroyd and Ramis' rewrites as he was filming his passion project in India, The Razor's Edge. Former Columbia Pictures chairman Frank Prince revealed that he had an understanding with Murray that he would green-light The Razor's Edge in return for Murray agreeing to star in the Ghostbusters. In May of 2010, Hal Ramis contracted an infection that led to complications from autoimmune inflammatory vasculitis and lost the ability to walk. Unfortunately, he passed away in February of 2014 at his home in Chicago at the age of 69. Upon Ramis' death, former President Barack Obama released a statement and ended it by saying that he hoped Ramis received total consciousness, which was, of course, a reference to Bill Murray's line from the movie Caddyshack.
So I got that going for me, which is nice.
Harold Ramis and Bill Murray were longtime friends, but had a falling out during the filming of Groundhog Day, which Ramis attributed to problems Murray had in life at the time. They didn't speak for more than 20 years. Shortly before Ramis' death, Brian, Murray's older brother, encouraged him to make amends. At that point, Ramis had lost most of his ability to speak, so Murray did most of the talking over several hours. Bill Murray also gave a tribute to Ramis at the '86 Academy Awards. Now, all actors aside, everyone knows who the true star of the film is. The Ecto-1, a 1959 Cadillac ambulance. According to Dan Aykroyd, the conceit in the movie was that it was a hearse converted to an ambulance, but in real life, it was an ambulance that was converted into a hearse and then converted back to an ambulance. There was also almost a delay on the star of the film, according to the late Ecto-1 designer Stephen Bain. On a webisode from the YouTube channel Beyond the Marquee, he had this to say.
Well, I got called in to design this thing, and it turns out that the prop man thought the decorator was making the key props and vice versa. And 2 weeks before the shoot, they discovered they didn't have the vehicle, they didn't have the ghost trap, they didn't have the blasters, they didn't have anything. So I did all this in 2 weeks.
You designed the ghost traps, the cars,
Everything.
the proton packs?
This wasn't finished. They had to ship this to New York to finish the thing. It was halfway done when we got there, and I had to go to New York to finish this off and finish the backpacks off and everything else.
I was going to have a special guest on today's episode, but unfortunately due to scheduling conflicts, he couldn't make it. However, I do have a snippet taken from my very first podcast, which interviews Timothy Meitzler, my dad, and how we worked on the very first Ghostbusters. Have a listen.
The first Ghostbusters, how did you get involved in that? Well, again, I worked for a towing company that used another company called Donna Motors. Okay. And Donna Motors didn't have enough vehicles to tow the, so they used another company. They used the company I worked for at the time, and we just towed shells of a car there. They looked like cars. They had wheels on them, but they had no motors, no trans, no interior. They were blacked out windows, and those are the cars that got destroyed. If you look real close to the movie, when the car goes up in the air, you can see there's no motor in it.
That's towards the end where they're about to enter the building,
Right.
and the street comes up.
And the street comes up. You know.
Did you see by chance how they did that?
Yeah, they had these dollies, like these trailer dollies, that actually lifted it up. It looked like concrete, and then they put after the movie is done, I guess they put the concrete in there because that was like sitting on a dolly, like it just went up in the air hydraulically.
Oh, okay.
So that's how they did that. I remember that. Yep, because I wondered how they did it too.
Although it was released 5 years later in 1989, Ghostbusters 2 was a hit with the fans, but it was and is still not as celebrated or quoted as much as the original.
Bummer.
During the scene in Ghostbusters 2, when the slime is starting to attack people in the city, you'll see a theater marquee that says, Cannibal Girls. This movie was Ivan Reitman's second film and it debuted in 1973. Norbert Group, the actor who portrayed Vigo the Carpathian, led a mean-spirited, tragic life. I can only say he was a crude, bigoted says Ghostbusters 2 producer Michael C. Gross when asked to give his opinion of him. Born in Berlin in 1940, Norbert was the son of Richard Group, a guard of Buchenwald, a concentration camp, and a wrestler and boxer in his own right. Norbert's boxing career was filled with bitter disappointments, such as when he was disqualified during a match for headbutting in 1966, and he sabotaged his talent with excessive drugs and alcohol.
Viggy, you have been a bad monkey.
Group ultimately wound up broke, homeless, and succumbed to prostate cancer in 2004. I guess you can say him and his father were ass.
I knew it. I'm surrounded by ass.
Now I have to tell everyone out there something that really made me upset, but also boosted the creep factor up to 11. I ordered a movie poster sized image of Vigo so that I could feature it in this review. But when the package arrived, there was nothing in the envelope. Somebody sent me something sealed with my address, but nothing inside. At first I thought it was John Cena, but then I thought about one particular scene in Ghostbusters 2 when Ray tries to develop photos of Vigo, and then all the photos suddenly burst into flames. I thought maybe the picture of Vigo really shouldn't be showed or tampered with, so I decided not to tempt fate and just show you this screenshot instead. For all the NES fans and gamers out there, in 1987, Nintendo released the NES Advantage, which was a tabletop joystick controller. In Ghostbusters 2, the Ghostbusters use it to puppeteer the Statue of Liberty.
Kinda makes you wonder, doesn't it? Wonder what? Whether she's naked under that toga. She's French. You know that.
Since the first Ghostbusters was a hit, a sequel was inevitable. It took 5 years to develop because the main cast was not going to rush into another Ghostbusters film because they wanted to make sure it was just right. Dan Aykroyd and Hal Ramis began developing script ideas and came up with the idea of bad energy in the city. During the late 80s, there was an overwhelmingly negative atmosphere in New York City, so Aykroyd and Ramis came up with the idea of having all of the negativity and bad vibes manifest into slime that ran under the city.
What am I supposed to do? Go on television and tell 10 million people they have to be nice to each other?
The infamous firehouse exterior that was used in Ghostbusters 1 and 2 is Hook and Ladder number 8, located at 14 North Moore Street, New York, New York. However, the interior shots were done in a Los Angeles studio at Fire Station number 23, a decommissioned Los Angeles firehouse. The party scene at the beginning of the movie was shot in the captain's residence on the 3rd floor. The experiment with the toaster was on the 2nd floor, and the rest of the scenes were done on the 1st floor. If it wasn't for Hal Ramis, Kurt Fuller would still be selling real estate. This actor portrayed many roles over the years, but before Ghostbusters, he was a real estate agent in his late 30s doing small movie roles and stage plays. He said that in one scene, the director Ivan Reitman gave him instructions to improvise part of it. He was terrified because he was surrounded by SNL-seasoned improv geniuses, but then realized that selling real estate proved to be the perfect training ground. To quote, "You put on a suit, agree with everyone that you're supposed to agree with, and try to fool everyone you're supposed to fool." In many ways, I was playing myself.
I'm a voter. Aren't you supposed to lie to me and kiss my butt?
Slimer, who was featured in the first movie and stole the show in the real Ghostbusters animated series, was brought back again for Ghostbusters 2 in an expanded role which saw him develop a rapport with Louis Tully.
Oh, it's you. Okay, but I didn't know you had your license.
Ever since the second installment was released, fans and the media kept wondering if Ghostbusters 3 would ever be. There have been many teasers and speculations from Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, Ivan Reitman, and others involved in the production, but nothing was ever set in stone. However, on June 16, 2009, Ghostbusters the video game, published by Atari, was released onto various gaming consoles. Aykroyd confessed that the storyline in this game is essentially what the aborted production of the sequel film Ghostbusters 3 would have been. Each of the actors who portrayed the Ghostbusters in the films, Dan Aykroyd, Hal Ramis, Bill Murray, and Ernie Hudson, lent their voices and likenesses to the in-game characters. I think we could finally address the elephant in the room. Ghostbusters Afterlife was such an amazing film that I can safely say that we finally have a trilogy. There were so many throwbacks to the original, as well as cameos by most of the original cast. To give you an idea of how awesome this movie was, Rotten Tomatoes even gave it a 95% audience score. Those people don't like shit. Both movies can be purchased on a few different formats, and today I'm going to be discussing Ghostbusters 1 and 2 Blu-ray, the Digibook, and of course, the Ghostbusters Ultimate Collection 4K box set. The Ghostbusters 1 and 2 pack has what's called the Digibook style case. Both discs are remastered in 4K, includes a 25-page built-in full-color booklet, and in addition to photographs, contains the story of Ghostbusters, the story of Ghostbusters 2, and the original 1984 talent bios. Also included is a separate leaflet entitled A Personal Note from Ivan Reitman. Disc 1 and 2 contain 2 documentaries, Who Are You Gonna Call?, a Ghostbusters retrospective, and Time Is But a Window, Ghostbusters 2 and Beyond. It also has features like the roundtable discussion with director Ivan Reitman and Dan Aykroyd, deleted scenes, music videos, and many other features. If you just want to watch the movies in spectacular sound and expanded color, then this is the collection for you. However, if you're a fanatic like me, you'll fork over a little bit more dough for the Ghostbusters Ultimate Collection 4K box set. This beast not only contains Ghostbusters 1 and 2 in 4K, but also Ghostbusters Afterlife in 4K, 2 bonus discs, and the 1985 out-of-print Making Ghostbusters screenplay, which also contains hundreds of behind-the-scenes photos, movie stills, storyboards, anecdotes, and illustrations for Ghostbusters 1, and digital codes so you can watch the films on other platforms. What's also awesome about this box set is that when you take all the items out of the box, the inside lights up green. And then you realize you're holding a replica of a ghost trap. How cool is that? This box set is a must-have for any Ghostbusters fan or collector. In addition to being a fan of Ghostbusters, and obviously you can see I collect almost everything related to the films, I found something online as well. It's called Ghost Heads. It was a documentary put out in 2016 all about the Ghostbusters, whether it be the films, it be the critical success of all the paraphernalia, and it also interviews various fans around the world that have made this such a beloved franchise. So if you're a ghost head like me, you definitely got to check out this documentary. I would give Ghostbusters 5 out of 5 stars, and Ghostbusters 2, 4 out of 5 stars. These films are filled with comedy, drama, action, adventure, and suspense. It's going to be really hard nowadays to create a film series such as this that has such a lasting impact on pop culture and a continued cult following 30 plus years later. SNL truly had some of the best writers and actors in the 70s and 80s. If you liked this video, please click on that subscribe button below. Give it a like, give it a share, turn on that notification bell so you can stay up to date with all new videos, news, updates, podcasts, etc. Please also follow me on my Instagram page at NJMovieFreak. I really appreciate everyone for watching this video. If you have any comments, any questions, please post them in the comments section below and I'll get to them as soon as I can. I hope you'll have a great day and I will see you soon. Oh, I can't stand this anymore. I gotta play some games. Everybody, I'll see you at Billy's Midway. This review is sponsored by Billy's Midway Arcade, located at 312 Lafayette Avenue, Hawthorne, New Jersey, located on the 2nd floor. Visit BillysMidway.com for more information.